Colorado's power player said baseball's All-Star Game would bring $100 million here. Well, we got the numbers. Another crash between a huge vehicle and a cyclist reminds us that sharing the road is a life-threatening proposition. Denver School Board promises new rules for its board directors after students walk out demanding the resignation of Director Tay Anderson. Our first hard numbers on how many Afghan refugees will be welcomed to Colorado. And after a woman asked Next viewers to help her find the strangers that her father helped on 9/11, a Coloradan reached out.
He was in my life for such a short time, but he made such a big impact.
A connection decades in the making. Next. Coloradans are asked to share the road, especially this week with Bike to Work Day coming up. 2 cyclists were killed in crashes in the metro area over the weekend. We've got people on bikes and walking who are asked to share the road with increasingly larger and high-profile vehicles that make it tougher for drivers to see and make those crashes catastrophic. Steve Steger looks at the search for solutions that could save lives.
He was a person, had a family, and they're going to be grieving right now.
The Colorado State Patrol says a 19-year-old auto mechanic from a dealership was taking this Ford F-150 Raptor for a test drive, crossed over into a lane, and hit the cyclist from behind. He died.
This is part of a broader issue.
Jack Todd is with the advocacy group Bicycle Colorado.
Cars are just getting bigger and bigger on the roads, and the bigger they get, the more dangerous they get for people outside of them.
Several studies over the last few years have found the height and design of higher profile cars like SUVs and trucks make them more susceptible for crashes with pedestrians and bicyclists.
Lower car with a more angled front, it's going to hit you down here. It's going to hit you in the thigh. Whereas a bigger car with a bigger front end, it's going to hit you in the chest, and those injuries are likely going to be a lot more severe.
The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety found more people are buying these bigger vehicles. From 2009 to 2018, registrations for SUVs rose from 21% of the market to 29%. In the same time frame, cycling deaths in Colorado doubled, from 10 in 2009 to 22 in 2018. Pedestrian deaths were up significantly, too.
We're kind of seeing this marketing from the auto industry that says, get bigger, get faster, and that's not helpful for people outside of cars.
The executive director of the Colorado Auto Dealers Association told me by phone today he doesn't dispute this data. He says automakers are working to improve technology to prevent crashes like this.
There's a lot of evidence that cars are getting safer and safer for the people inside of them. But as those safety improvements come, drivers get more comfortable and they get more complacent. And so cars actually are getting more dangerous for people outside of them.
In the other case this weekend in Longmont, a 78-year-old man in a recumbent bike was hit by a 25-year-old driving a Kia sedan. Police haven't released the details about what happened in that case. Both bicycle advocates and the director of the Colorado Auto Dealers Association told me that infrastructure is also a big problem here, which is an interesting conundrum, Kyle, because basically since the advent of cars, the auto industry has lobbied cities to make roads more car-friendly, which in turn has made them less cyclist and pedestrian friendly.
It is a bit rich to hear from the car industry, like, whoa, how do we end up with these cities that are basically based around cars? I mean, they're that way for a reason, and change would have to happen with equal intentionality.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at it now. We were standing on an extremely wide street to do that interview. And all the studies show that if a driver approaches a street and it's pretty wide, they're probably going to go a lot faster than they would on a narrower street where they feel a little bit less comfortable.
Meanwhile, I'm teaching my 3-year-old not to cross the street unless she has eye contact and a nod from a driver.
So many of them are on the phone. You got to make sure you see them. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. More than 1,000 Denver public school students walked out of class today. They're demanding the resignation of School Board Director Tay Anderson. The anonymous secondhand allegations of sexual assault against Anderson were not substantiated by an outside investigation. That investigation did confirm what Anderson had said publicly to us months ago, that there was an instance where he flirted online with somebody who he later learned was underage. This morning's walkout from at least 4 different schools came after Friday's school board meeting where Anderson was censured by other school board members. Today, 2 board members and a superintendent met with protest leaders, promised to create a code of conduct for school board members.
A major part of this code of conduct will also be strict policies about board members' social media communications. And the code of conduct will also place clear protocols and consequences for misconduct to help ensure accountability.
If a board director violates a social media code, there could be a censure, like the one that Anderson just got, but not a removal from office. A recall can only happen if voters decide to take somebody out of office. Right now, Anderson's speaking to a crowd of his supporters, and he told reporters earlier today he plans to address his future on the Denver School Board. We'll let you know if this turns out to be any kind of significant announcement. The Mosley name could have ended up on the neighborhood formerly known as Stapleton. Residents there decided to go Central Park instead, but just down the road, the new clinic at the VA hospital in Aurora will honor the Mosleys, specifically Tuskegee Airman Lieutenant Colonel John W. Mosley. He was also the first black football player at CSU. His family has been lobbying for a naming honor for some time, and the U.S. House voted today to name that new VA clinic after Mosley.
Windy and cool on this Monday, with that cool front coming through, bringing a light dusting of snow over some of the higher peaks. Denver's high 10 degrees cooler than average in the mid-60s. We'll see these numbers again tomorrow as the second front moves in from the north, tracking severe storms off to the east and an early preview of fall as the autumnal equinox isn't until Wednesday at 1:20. With the partly cloudy skies, an isolated shower is possible, and up over the higher terrain, some freeze warnings for temperatures below 30 degrees. Tonight, watch out for the full harvest moon, a cool low of 43 under those partly cloudy skies. We'll see temperatures warm to the mid-60 mark tomorrow under mostly sunny skies, and then the autumnal equinox Wednesday for the start of fall, sunshine and mid-80s.
My thanks to everyone who supported the nonprofit Work Options through that last week's Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign. They're culinary training students. They're in high demand with restaurants right now because of all the staffing shortage. And what's wonderful about the nonprofit Work Options is that this is free training, free job training for people who have barriers to employment. It could be a criminal record or homelessness, domestic violence victims, single parents, folks who want to work but haven't been able to get the right opportunity and perhaps just need that job training. Together, you raise almost $9,000 to help Work Options expand its mission, connecting those Coloradans who desperately want to work with employers who desperately want to find them. New neighbors are coming from Afghanistan to Colorado. We now know how many and when they'll arrive. A next viewer reaches out with the gift of connection and admiration for a woman who misses her father.
It's nice to see someone else in the same family, because that was you had an amazing dad.
The search for the Coloradans that he helped out on 9/11 comes together right here, next. Colorado's decades-long history of resettling refugees is going to continue with 1,000 or 2,000 Afghans coming here in the next few months. Those Afghans who fled the Taliban takeover of their country with the American military withdrawal there are still being processed at various U.S. military installations. Part of that processing involves COVID-19 vaccinations and then a 21-day stay after that to make sure folks are healthy. Aid agencies expect that most of Colorado's newest residents will start arriving by mid-October, with about 90% coming to the Denver area. They'll join an existing Afghan refugee community that's been here for years.
So this has been a real place of welcome, specifically for Afghans. So in the last 5 years, this has been the greatest newcomer population through the refugee program here to Colorado. And so one of the things that feels very true for us is that we've welcomed Afghans, we've worked with Afghans, and that Afghans themselves are committed to making Colorado a home.
Most of the Afghans coming to Colorado will be in the U.S. on what's called humanitarian parole. It's a 2-year authorization that allows them some time to apply for asylum and a path to citizenship. Should note here, one of the largest word of thanks campaigns that you've done was an effort last month where you raised more than $200,000 as a next audience to support those Afghan families that'll soon be coming to Colorado. Traveled through DIA lately, there is a good chance that you have seen some pre-pandemic-like security lines. A lot of folks out there. And you've also noticed that some time-saving conveniences are no longer offered. For starters, DIA no longer posts security wait times online. You used to be able to check those online, figure out whether you were going to go to the North Security, South Security, or over to the A side to save time. And the TSA pre-check line frequently is not open at the North checkpoint anymore. DIA told us that it stopped posting those security wait times during the pandemic when the passenger volume was really low, and then decided not to bring back that service so they could save some money. DIA said it's looking bring back those wait time postings for security by the end of the year. We checked some similarly sized airports to see if they also cut back on that to save money. You can still find out the security wait time at the airports in Atlanta, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Houston. They don't do that in Chicago at O'Hare or at Midway. We also asked, in response to your questions to us, about the TSA pre-check at the North checkpoint. DIA said they simply aren't seeing enough pre-check passengers coming through to have that line open. They know in advance about how many pre-check passengers are coming through the airport every day, and the airport and TSA decided that they'd use their staff for the regular security lines instead. Politicians' promises about the economic impact of big events are kind of like the promotional banners that get hung all over town. Once baseball's All-Star Game was over, the predictions of big dollars coming to town kind of got put away with the banners. When the All-Star Game came to Denver in July, the mayor and the governor estimated a $100 million impact. Well, now Marshall Zellinger has the receipts.
There's no denying the Midsummer Classic at Coors Field helped Denver's bottom line. The question is, how much? The city sales tax collection for July 2021 compared to the last 2 Julys shows more money for the city of Denver.
How much of that do we attribute to a single event versus how much do we attribute it to an economy that was coming back?
DU Finance Professor Matt Klaus reviewed the city sales tax returns with me because of the promises made in April.
By some estimates, this event will mean more than $100 million impact to our local economy.
$100 million to our local economy does not mean $100 million in sales tax kept by the city, but the sales tax numbers give us a closer look at how much was spent and where. For example, sales tax revenue at restaurants and bars jumped $4 million compared to last year, but that was in the heart of the pandemic when restaurants were not at the same capacity as today. If we compare July 2021 to July 2019, the sales tax increase was just $125,000. Hotel stays resulted in $2 million more in tax collections, but were slightly down compared to July 2019. However, the city earned the most dollars per rented room since October 2019, and 72% of the rooms were occupied. That's the most since just before the pandemic began in March 2020.
Did we benefit by having the All-Star Game here? The answer is yes. Yes, of course. Did we benefit that much? The stadium was full, but how many of those people were from out of state and bringing in new money versus the people within the state with existing money?
Overall, the city took in nearly $13 million more in sales tax revenue compared to last July, but it was just $6 million more if we compare this July to July 2019.
I quickly want to point out the most interesting stat to me. Pot sales tax revenue was down compared to last year, $1 million, but up compared to 2019 by about $233,000. Let's put that aside for a second.
Yeah.
Overall,
yeah,
the money spent by people this year compared to last year was like $381 million more. When you compare it to a non-pandemic year, $173 million more spent. But can you attribute half of it? How much can you attribute to an All-Star Game?
Yeah. So what you're telling me, Marshall, is that a trained observer of politics is telling me that these politicians' promises may not be able to be pinned down in the end.
Correct. You can look at the sales tax data to guide us, but there's so much spending, furniture, appliances, construction materials, that is calculated in how much people spend and how much sales tax is collected. That would have been spent regardless of an All-Star Game or not.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to go in and tell our bosses that we're 32% better at our jobs than last year. Can they prove it? Probably not. Probably can't disprove it either.
For 20 years, they've known the story. And they always ask, do you ever think about that? I do.
For 20 years, she's thought about the man she calls St. Emilio. She reconnected with his family through Next, bonding over the time they spent together on the day that changed America. We We heard from a good number of you after we shared the story of Emilio Martinez. How 20 years ago on 9/11, Emilio Martinez drove a bunch of stranded Coloradans home in a big rented van after their flight was grounded partway in Nebraska. Emilio's daughter came on next with a plea to find her dad's passengers from 9/11. They lost touch after he died several years ago. A woman from Colorado Springs reached out to tell us her recollections of the man she calls Saint Emilio. Brian Wendland has the story.
Hi, Mercedes.
Hi, Joyce. How are you?
I'm good today. I'm good every day.
It's so good to see you.
Here's the thing about Emilio Martinez and strangers. He has a way of bringing them together.
You had an amazing dad. That day, he was so amazing, you know? He was in my life for such a short time, but he made such a big impact. So
I think that was part of the reason I wanted to find anyone that was in that car. It's been 5 years since we lost him.
For Mercedes Martinez, Emilio was dad. For Joyce Blute, Emilio was a guardian angel after helping her get home from the airport in Omaha, Nebraska on 9/11.
can you imagine today something happening and being in an airport and you can't get home and some strangers there saying, I'll take people with me. Yeah, right. You know,
it's just that was the kind of guy he was.
Today, Joyce and Mercedes met via Zoom for the first time to talk about that day 20 years ago.
And there you are at the lowest moment, seeing all this tragedy. And then someone pops up when you don't know what you're going to do. And you just put your trust in them, and because you had to that day.
I hope you know that you turned around and made an impact on me, because it just was such a blessing that you reached out.
Joyce was one of 7 in the van Emilio rented to get people back to Colorado.
We did share then where we all lived. Did we had family? Did we work? Where were we going or coming from?
2 families forever linked by September 11th. 2 strangers who are now friends.
20 years later, here, 2 people who did not know each other have now met, and I can't wait to meet you in person.
For Next, I'm Brian Wendland.
Appreciate them sharing their reunion. It's a sign that some local ranchers have a need for speed. That and your feedback next. It's a sign that you need to slow your donkey down. Rita spotted the reminder on Highway 34 outside Granby. People must haul donkey through there pretty regularly because the county started putting up these signs warning that sheriff's deputies will bust your donkey if you don't slow down. If you see a sign that makes you laugh your donkey off, this is an official county sign. Email a photo to next@9news.com or get our attention on Twitter with the hashtag HeyNext. I want to let you know Denver Public School Board Director Tay Anderson has finished his speech to supporters tonight. Nothing big came out of it. He's not resigning. He did say that he would hold town halls with students to hear their concerns after they walked out of class today demanding his resignation. Feedback via text tonight, I won't read your number aloud, said kudos to you for teaching your 3-year-old to make eye contact and get a nod before crossing a street. Texter writes in to say delivery drivers are also trained to make eye contact and receive acknowledgement, especially with kids. Well, that's a wonderful thing. Might be a decent standard for all of us driving through residential neighborhoods. Just taking care of other people as opposed to, I don't know, what we've seen recently on our roads. See you next time.